Welcome to Structo's Meet the Writers. This is a short form interview series with the authors and poets who have got their work in the new issue of Structo. Today, very happy to speaking to Tom Benn. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Ewan.
So you have a short story in this new issue. We'll talk about it in a sec, but it's quite an unusual piece. So you've said you're happy to read a part of it.
Yes, yeah. I can read the first page or page and a half or so, yeah?
Just to give people a sense, that'll be brilliant. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, so this is Stuart Hall and Stuart Hall, the opening. Stuart Hall is a BBC presenter of Northwest regional news programmes and national game shows. Stuart Hall has fallen a long way, Krishna Guru Murthy says on Channel 4 News. Stuart Hall is a Jamaican-born left-wing academic and occasional BBC presenter. Stuart Hall is racially abused on the street in 60s Birmingham while out with his wife. Stuart Hall says we are all hybrid. Stuart Hall calls it the beautiful game. Stuart Hall says when I ask anybody where they're from, I expect nowadays to be told an extremely long story. They're from really 5 different places, and in their heads, their sense of themselves, to be juggling a set of world identities, they're trying to find their place. I can't be doing with coloured men no more, me nana says to a friend, in 90s Hume, Manchester. The lot of them brung me nowt but pain, while her lover, the docker from Trinidad, his hands, calloused and patient, teach mine to play dominoes and show a child what colour town is of a dry night, across high-rises, low-rises, deck-access flats like this one, above pubs, parks, courtyards, radial routes, side streets. All is amber, lazy amber, scurrying amber, tassel-shaded sitting room fishbowl, greased bus window, lamppost blinking amber. Stuart Hall says the everyday and mundane elements of our lives can affect the person we become. Stuart Hall is a millionaire from the small market town of Ashton-under-Lyne, Lancashire, in the East Borough of Greater Manchester, known since 1974 as Tameside, after the River Tame. Tameside includes the towns of Hyde and Droylsden. Stuart Hall pleads guilty to indecent assault, crimes committed between 1967 and 1986. Stuart Hall is found guilty of 2 further charges and receives an additional sentence. Stuart Hall loves Shakespeare, loves English literature. Stuart Hall's football commentary is highly elusive. Stuart Hall in 1958 reports on his first match. It is at Hillsborough. Stuart Hall, more than 50 years later, no longer living in not yet Tameside, breaks his garage door motor. He rings me father for a quote to fix it. Me father sends 2 lads round to fettle Stuart Hall's garage door. Me father buys his first house, a 2-up 2-down red brick in Droylsden, Tameside. It is 1980. For 8 months he cannot afford furniture beyond a bed. Stuart Hall is brought up in Hyde, not yet Tameside. Hyde is home to the Moors murderers and 2 of their victims, and to Harold Shipman's medical practice and hundreds of his victims. Ian Brady is from Glasgow. He is born Ian Duncan Stewart. His father is unknown. Myra Hindley grows up in Crumpsall, Manchester, brutalised by poverty, a family of 4 living in a single room. She dies of bronchial pneumonia, age 60. Me father, age 60, cannot bring himself to say her name. She is too wicked, he says. I'll leave it there.
Thanks a lot, Tom. It's really good just to get a sense of this really unique story. And you surprised me just before we started recording by saying that this is the first story that you've finished. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, it's the first and only story I've ever finished. I write novels and I write screenplays, and I teach. I'm a lecturer in creative writing and crime fiction. So I teach short stories occasionally, but I don't understand them, and I've never written one before this. Short stories are mad, aren't they? They're just a bit magic. I don't really understand how they work. I think the form is closer to poetry than a novel or another narrative. So I think the reason this is a bit unusual is because I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, in that case, I think you should keep not knowing what you're doing, because it works really well. And as it started to happen, kind of where you left off, it begins to weave in almost several layers of narrative. I mean, there's a bunch going on in those first 2 pages, and yeah, it's incredibly interesting to see the way things begin to pop up in the weave. It's really nice. So, okay, what brought you then to write this as a short story? Did it begin as something else?
I knew I wanted to write something about Manchester because Manchester is kind of the blood of everything I write because it's where I'm from, it's where my family's from. And I really love genre fiction. You know, genre again is kind of my bread and butter. So I wanted to write a crime story, and I had a few kind of grab bag ideas and real life figures that I thought were interesting, and I wanted to see what I thought of them. So I decided to write, but I realized I couldn't kind of figure out what form it was. So I had this idea to kind of write a crime story without a hero or an anti-hero or any of the kind of familiar linear deduction, and instead it's just kind of this weird chain of insinuations and juxtapositions, clues basically, but we're never sure exactly what it is. We just know where it takes place. You know, the kind of the common denominator through the story is locus. You know, it's region, it's the Northwest, it's Manchester, England, like I said, where I'm from. And so the story just kind of traces these blood patterns around the region and across generations. And at first, when I was writing it, I just wanted it to read almost like a spoof Wikipedia article, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of flat summaries of kind of mildly interesting pieces of information, but a bit useless. But then this first-person narrator just kept derailing it with interjections. So I got a bit stuck. And then a mate of mine lent me some lyric essays by an essayist called Elliot Weinberger, and he's brilliant. And that kind of gave me a coat hanger, the form I wanted, and it kind of went from there.
So your novels are genre. There's a lot of kind of crime fiction. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say they're crime fiction. They're kind of wonky crime fiction. They're not kind of police procedurals, maybe, or forensic thrillers. They're kind of slightly strange, slightly heightened social realist novels set in working class Manchester. Usually from the criminal's perspective. You know, they have kind of an anti-hero narrator, and this is kind of set around this. You know, this story, Stuart Hall, kind of touches on that region, that place. But I think it's just the tracing paper has shifted slightly, and it's trying to kind of affectionately and antagonistically kind of mess with the genre a little bit more. I think. Yeah. Which, you know, a short story kind of, you can do that, can't you? Because, like I said, I don't know the rules.
Yeah, well, that's really nice. But not knowing the rules is one thing, but knowing how to write and perhaps not knowing what is normally done in a genre is quite a fertile ground for interesting stuff to happen. So once you figured, oh, I've accidentally written a short story, firstly, how did you know when to stop? Because it feels like it's stopping at the right point, but I can imagine if it's something, especially given the structure of it, how you came to the conclusion that, oh, okay, this is probably the point I'll leave it.
I don't know if that was a conscious decision. I mean, with anything, it's never finished, is it? It's just abandoned for sanity's sake. But yeah. I think because I wanted a kind of incantatory rhythm, I knew I had to take it full circle, and I knew I needed to bring the kind of the Stuart Hall motif back. I had a longer version of this story, interestingly. It's funny that you mentioned that. It was about 500 words longer, which involved a more kind of quasi-fictionalized family history. But again, it just felt like I, as in I, the author, or I, a narrator figure, were commandeering it, and I was missing the point. You know what I mean? I was vandalizing something rather than vandalizing the genre. I was vandalizing what I wanted to say and what I was trying to think and articulate.
Got it.
And it's very rare that those moments of clarity come to me. Usually, it's just fog. It's just mud, isn't it?
So I was wondering actually if one of the reasons you stopped. Yeah, I was wondering if one of the reasons you did stop is that it was a deadline, because the reason that we have this piece in the issue and the reason that actually it was locked in so early was that this was shortlisted for the Desperate Literature Prize last year.
That's right. Yeah. It was actually my students at UEA, where I teach, who recommended I do something with this story, because I read it it was a kind of baptism of fire. I read it as a work in progress at an evening we run every January for our students, where the tutors get to read work in progress, and then the student get to critique us. I think, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. They've listened to this, it kind of sparked a little bit of debate where whether or not this is a piece of genre fiction, or can crime do this. And I thought, I wanted it to be kind of encouraging, but I was very honest. I said, I'm not a short story writer, and my students suggested that I submit this, and I saw the deadline, like you said, for the Desperate Lit prize, and I thought, I'll take a punt, why not?
It's a really interesting one. They get a very, I don't know what it is about the Desperate Literature Prize, but they get a really interesting mix of stuff sent in. It's not the kind of the usual stuff that you might think goes into a general short story competition. Everything is slightly at a slightly askew in various different ways, whether it's form or content or whatever it happens to be. So it's kind of interesting to see that was what it was. That was what they perhaps saw in this work. It's very interesting.
Yeah, a kind of an anthology for misfits. I mean, I was looking at the shortlisted writers, the little anthology book, and when I got to meet them, and there's some amazing writing in there, and all very, very different, like you said, like radically different, either doing something weird and interesting, but with a dramatic function, to do with form. It wasn't just kind of weird for the sake of it. There's just lots of really interesting writing going on. It's nice that there is, there's a space for that, a place for that. Not everything has to be a kind of blockbuster, very clear, everything needs to fit in the right box. That's okay too. I think the world needs some of that as well, but it's nice that there's a little space for the weirdness.
Yeah, definitely. And so you were able to read at one of the launches they did?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I got to go to Madrid in the before time, which seems centuries ago now, before 19 and everything ended. But I got to go to Madrid, and I got to go to the Desperate Lit bookshop and meet Terry and Robert and the prize organisers, and the winner and the shortlistees, and do a reading there. And it was really good. They wined and dined us. It was grand.
That's really nice. They're incredibly supportive of a lot of different, different kind of literature projects. But it's been really nice to see them kind of developing their own, I guess, editorial voice in a way.
Mm-hmm. And that prize is growing from strength to strength. We have a lot of students at UEA who are excited to submit to it and excited to read the writers on there who get shortlisted each year. It's a name, it's known, it's out there.
It's really nice, especially it's impressive considering it's on its third year, I think. So it's not been going long.
It's very.
So that was me disconnecting there. So I think my computer's getting quite warm in this ridiculously warm office. So in the interest of both of our health, we come to the end here, but your main writing life is novels. At what stage are you in the whole process of novel writing right now?
Okay, so I've just finished my fourth novel, and it was resisting completion for some time being many years.
Oh yeah, okay. And it's because you have a series on the go. Is it part of that?
No, it's a standalone. It's kind of set ostensibly in the same universe, I suppose, but it's much more female focused. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's set in Manchester, and it's a kind of wonky, inverted piece of crime fiction. But in my other books, which were kind of focused on the career criminals and the men in this underworld, in this one, all the crime and the criminals are on the periphery. And instead, the focus is on these three generations of women in this family, from teenagers to grandmothers and great grandmothers. And it's about how they got trapped in the orbit of these bad men, I guess. So it's a more kind of internalized novel, I suppose. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
Nice. So it must be nice to kind of be looking at fresh sheets of paper now, or are you still editing?
No. Well, for now, it's like I said before. These things are never finished, are they? They're just abandoned for sanity's sake,
or ripped away from you. Yeah,
that's right. You know it well, I'm sure. But yeah, that's me.
Great. Well, thanks again. Let's leave it there for now. And I'm going to open my door and windows.
Yeah, very wise. Yeah, I'm going to do the same. But brilliant chatting to you, Ewan.
Yeah, cheers, Tom.
Cheers.